I've never told this story before, but now I'm ready. 4 years ago, I was a pretty normal girl. I had been very lucky not to have any health problems my whole life. That was until April of 2014. I was in work as a teaching assistant in a primary school when one day, out of nowhere, I just got really sick. Within days, I was in hospital where I would end up staying for months and months on end, completely alone and probably the most confused I've ever been in my whole life, because to the doctors I was a red herring. I remember the day like it was yesterday. I had nerve conduction studies done in my forehead because I had a droopy eye on the left side, which is basically what told us that I was sick to begin with, and then more symptoms gradually came after that. And after the nerve studies, I was due to have a lumbar puncture that afternoon, which I was not happy about because I hate needles, as I'm sure most of you do, but my phobia goes to a whole other level. Like, I refuse all of my jabs because I just could not do it. So the thought of my back being stabbed by a 6-inch needle wasn't that great. But after a lot of persuading from my family, I knew it was something that had to be done. So that afternoon, I had a lumbar puncture. It was a huge test to rule in or rule out certain illnesses like meningitis and things. And without a diagnosis, obviously, that was a huge test that needed to be done to see if they could give me a diagnosis from that. So that was it. It had to be done. The doctor that was doing it introduced himself. He was nice enough, comforted me, told me that I wouldn't feel any pain really after the local anaesthetic had gone in. So the only needle I had to be worried about was the first needle, well, first 2 needles I think it was 2. So both that were used to inject the local anaesthetic, and then I wasn't supposed to feel anything after that. Once he'd started the process, the first 5 minutes were painful, but nothing too crazy. So I thought, it's gonna be okay. Boy, was I wrong. Because about 10 minutes into the procedure, I couldn't handle it anymore. I was screaming in pain. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I was screaming. Looking back now that I've had brain surgery and a cesarean, that pain of that first lumbar puncture was the worst pain I have ever felt in my whole entire life. The pain was getting worse every second that he kept going, and I just knew that something was wrong. Because I was screaming so much, he kept asking me if I wanted him to stop, but I knew that if I said yes, that I'd have to go through that pain all again the next day and have someone else do it. So I said no, carry on. Even though I was in the worst pain of my life, I did not want to go through that pain again. But unfortunately, after 25 minutes, which is the max that he's allowed to be doing it for, he had to stop because he said he couldn't retrieve the fluid. He was unsuccessful. I probably cried all night that night because about 10 minutes after the procedure was over, my neurologist came over to the ward with my MRI results, and I had a brain tumour. But the pain was so unbearable that for that whole night I could not move. I couldn't even get to the bathroom that was right next to me, because at the time they didn't have a wheelchair. So by the next morning they actually had got me a wheelchair, thank God. So the next morning I was able to go to the bathroom for the first time. So the next morning, as I walked to the bathroom holding on to the back of the wheelchair, my mum looked at me really funny. And she said, "Beth, why are you walking so weird?" And I don't know how, but I hadn't noticed. But obviously at the time I was on a lot of drugs because I was in a lot of pain, so I was on morphine and things. So every time I did something, it was kind of like an out-of-body experience. So I had no idea that I was walking funny at all. But then when I watched myself, I noticed that my knees were giving way every few steps underneath me. Kind of like a jelly leg is the only way I could describe it really. When you knock the back of someone's knee and their knee kind of gives way. But at first I thought maybe it was just because of the medication that I was on. And a few hours later, a consultant came over and asked if he could try the lumbar puncture on me. They actually had promised to give me an x-ray guided one if the first one didn't work, but he was so confident in himself that he could do it. He said, "Give me 5 minutes, I'll do it, you won't feel a thing, I promise you." So I said yeah. At this point in the conversation, he mentioned that it was a junior doctor that had performed the lumbar puncture on me the day before. And I was gobsmacked because I had no idea. They did not mention a single thing about him being a junior doctor. And because of how terrified I was of needles, I would not have let that junior doctor perform it on me if I'd have known. So I was pretty mad. He had started the procedure at all, because I told him, please don't tell me, just give me a thumbs up when it's in. He actually finished the procedure, gave me a thumbs up, and I was like, is it in yet? And then my mum went, Beth, it's already out, it's done. And I was so freaking relieved, I can't even begin to tell you. But the fact that I had hardly felt a thing kind of confirmed to me that something had gone very wrong that first time. As the weeks passed, my walking got worse and worse. I was discharged from hospital to my house a few times, but always ended up back in because of some reason. I was just too sick. I was always ill, I was always needing some kind of medical attention, so the hospital was my home for the whole year that I was sick. When we were being discharged, we said, well, what's wrong with her legs? Why is she walking like this? And they said, oh, she'll be okay in 3 days. Oh, she'll be okay in 5 days. They just kept changing the amount of days that it would be until they got to a point of saying, we don't know. But they didn't give me a wheelchair. I actually asked them as I was leaving, where could I get a wheelchair from? Because I couldn't walk around at home. My knees were giving way. I could only walk a certain distance. I wasn't going to go home and be able to walk from my front door to my bedroom. My knees were just giving way too much, so I could only walk really short distances. And when I asked them where I could get a wheelchair from, you actually won't believe this, they said, I don't know, try an old charity shop or something. That's when I kind of knew that something had happened and I wasn't in on it. I had no answers and I was getting worse every day that passed. Then one day in late August 2014, 2 months after the lumbar puncture, I tried to walk the short few steps into my nan's house when I collapsed. And then me thinking that it was a one-off, I tried to get up again and I collapsed again. Little did I know that that would be the last time that I would walk. Over the next 4 years, I was completely wheelchair bound. Everything in my legs were completely normal apart from the fact that I could not stand or walk. My reflexes were fine, I could feel every sensation and the muscle was there. I had no problem moving my legs, I just could not stand or walk. So the only way I would get about in my house before getting my motorised wheelchair was by crawling. I wasn't completely reliant on my wheelchair because I was still lucky enough to be able to crawl around. I tried physiotherapy. They actually sent me to the local hospital to get full plaster Paris leg casts to see if I could walk without my knees buckling in them. And they did those from my foot all the way up to my hip and it still didn't work. My knees still had enough give in them to make me fall. I tried hydrotherapy, I tried weights, I tried so many different things at home, everything I could, but none of them worked. In every appointment with my neurologist or neurosurgeon, I would beg them to please just try and find out what was wrong. They ended up giving me a full spine MRI and some nerve conduction studies on my legs, which was so painful, and I didn't really get anything back from those. The only kind of answer that I did ever get was I was suffering from tingling sensation in the top of my back, which I still get to this day, and they put me on gabapentin and said that it was for nerve damage. So that was the only thing that I was ever told about. But they wouldn't tell me that I did have nerve damage, and they didn't tell me where it was. So take that how you will. For the past 4 years, I've been extremely depressed and frustrated. I was in a wheelchair, I wasn't able to stand or walk, and I had no explanation as to why. All of my family and friends and anyone who knew of my story kind of knew it was due to lumbar puncture because it was just too much of a coincidence for it not to be. I'd started having these problems the day that I had the lumbar puncture that I just knew had gone wrong, but no one was willing to admit it. I fell so deep into a dark hole of frustration, anger and sadness that I completely lost all hope that I would ever walk again. A lot of my family actually admitted to me that they didn't think it would happen either. This was made even worse when I had a hospital appointment one day and they asked me if I was frustrated, from not having a diagnosis. And I said that I was, but at the same time, if they are really trying to find out why and they can't find out, then there's nothing I can do about it. And his answer? Good, because it's easier for us if you can just accept that you may never walk again. I don't know in what world they thought that it was okay to say something like that, because it's me who has to live this life every day. It's not you. So why would it be easier for you if I can accept it? I don't understand why they would say something so insensitive when it was me that had to live this life, not them. I was in a really dark place, and for years that question haunted me. And that's when I was blessed with a miracle that I really needed. Me and Baz had been trying to have a baby for 2.5 years since I had my operation to remove my brain tumour, and we were pregnant. In February of this year we welcomed little Gray, and he is the most amazing thing ever. People actually wondered whether my pregnancy would change something in my spine and back, but nothing did. After having Gray, I went back to physiotherapy, back to the pool, and I actually started something called osteopathy, which I'd heard about. It's kind of like, I don't know if it is classed as a massage, but it's kind of like a massage. Basically they massage bits of your back, they click you, just do things like that. So that was something that I was recommended. It's kind of like an alternative therapy. I had it done in the Leaf Clinic in Menai Bridge, and I actually did find it helpful. And I don't know if it was just kind of good for my mind that I was doing something different, but I started to kind of have a different outlook on things after that. Then in July of this year, when Gray was 5 months old and 4 years after the lumbar puncture that put me in a wheelchair, I started getting these weird pains in my lower back, and like shooting pains going right down my legs, and a lot of numbness and tingling. I can't even describe the pain properly, but it's something that I had never ever felt before, so I had no idea what it was. My tingles got a lot worse, and I was having them all the time, whereas I used to get them maybe once, twice a week. Now it was all the time, and I ended up having to spend most of my nights in the shower because that's the only relief I get from them. But they were intense, they were constant, and it was terrible and painful. All of this carried on for a good few weeks until gradually I felt my legs getting stronger. I'd always had strength, feeling, sensation, reflexes and all that. I just couldn't stand or walk. But the strength was getting even better than it was. And of all my years doing hydrotherapy in the swimming pool, I was never able to walk up the steps. I could only get to the length of the water, which was chest height. And I decided to try it out, and I got up 3 of the steps to just above my hip. Things were changing. By October I had worked up enough strength to try and walk out a bit further, so when I was on a family holiday, my sisters and I decided that we would try and link arms and see how far we could get in the shallow pool. And unbelievably, we got to below my knees. I can't even begin to describe the emotions running through my head in that second, because I knew that the water wasn't doing much, if anything at all. And my mum told me, just keep going Beth, see if you can do it. But I just wasn't ready. If it was to happen, I wanted to make it special. I wanted it to be a surprise, something that I could keep forever. So I kept it to myself. For the first time in my whole life, I was actually excited to get home from holiday, just so that I could work on myself and just try my absolute hardest to see what I could do. And then once we were back, I asked Baz to borrow some crutches from his mum's house to see if I could even try and stand with crutches, because it's something that I could never do. I was too weak to be able to stand on crutches even, because my knees were just not letting me. I started off slow, just putting a tiny bit of weight through my legs and most of it through my hands, and then put more through my legs and less through my hands. And gradually, I was actually able to put weight through them. For weeks, I privately stood in the comfort of my own living room on the crutches for a few seconds at a time, just stood there, working up my strength. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to tell anyone. That led to me taking 1 step with the crutches, 2 steps with the crutches, 3 steps with the crutches. It was crazy. But due to my ME and me just generally not being a very well person, I get tired very easily, so those 3 steps were enough for me. I can't really push my body as much as I would like to, but that was a huge achievement. And then a while after being able to stand and do a few steps with the crutches, I knew it was almost time for me to just try without them. But I still wasn't ready. I knew that after 4 years of complete confusion and not knowing, it was the not knowing that really hurt me. Without a diagnosis, without answers, without hope, that if by some complete miracle that I was able to stand, I would have a complete emotional breakdown. So I avoided it as much as I could, pushed it to the back of my brain, until one day I just woke up and I knew it had to be done. So I set up my camera, and this is what happened next. For a while I have been feeling kind of different about my legs. I literally feel emotional just talking about it. It's not something that I've talked about a lot, and it's not something that I am open up to many people, because I kind of hide my feelings to myself even. I think it's because I know that when it happens, if I'm ever able to walk again, because we've never known what is wrong with me, I've never had a definite yes or no if I will ever walk again. But I feel like if I can stand with literally just water up to my knee, I don't feel like that is actually doing very much to hold me up. So I feel like I need to try. I've been walking on crutches for a few weeks, and it started by me putting basically all of my weight through my hands and none through my feet, to me being able to take a good few steps with them. So now I'm gonna try. And obviously if this fails, then it fails. At least I've tried. So I can do pretty well with the crutches now. I'm just trying to put it in my head, if you can do it without much water and you can do it with crutches, then you can do it. Just do it. I did it. I had to put the camera off to compose myself a little bit. Oh my god. I cannot describe how long I've waited for that moment. I cannot describe how long I've been in pain, because I didn't know how long I've been in pain because of something that people had covered up and then admitted to once the suing period was over. And I'm so happy, because I've been trying so hard in my therapy. I can't even describe how happy that makes me and how happy it's going to make my family. And I literally cannot wait to show them. But I think I'm going to wait a little longer so I can be stronger on my feet before I can. I just wanted to get kind of like, let's be honest, I didn't think I would be able to do it, but I did it. So I just wanted to get my first steps on camera. And I'm not even kidding when I tell you that I cried non-stop for days after this, so completely overwhelmed with emotions, and my head is still completely wrecked to this day, as you can tell. It was just all over the place. Oh god. So once that I found out that I could be able to stand, the next thing was for me to strengthen up and calm myself down. I found the most amazing physiotherapist called Colin, and he was totally baffled by my story. I learned more from him in an hour than I did from any doctor or professional in 4 years. He explained everything in such detail that I could finally start to understand what went wrong, why it went wrong, and where do I go next? He explained to me how I could make progress without tiring myself in the process, without overworking my body. We did floor exercises, stretches, Pilates movements, all to strengthen my body and my core. And now we're up to relearning little things like going from sitting to standing, standing to sitting. Just little things that you take for granted that you don't realise that you need. It's always the small things that you need the most. I worked so hard doing my physio, and it was even harder because no one knew that this was happening behind the scenes. Only Colin knew, no one else knew. So it was a massive, massive secret that I was holding in. I always had the idea in my head that if by any chance I would be able to walk again, that I'd set up my camera and surprise them by just standing up and seeing their reaction. That was the only thing keeping my hopes up for a long time, honestly. The thought that maybe one day I could do that. Then in late November, a month and a half of keeping it to myself, it was time. The twins came first because I just simply couldn't keep it away from them any longer, and I'd already set up the camera and things to film a video. So just before we filmed the video, I turned the camera without them realising and surprised them there. My other sister Katrin came after that. I surprised her. It worked out so well actually, because I was showing her my progress on the crutches, and then she had come to stand in front of me and I dropped them as she was walking away. So it worked out really well. And then Baz followed. But I didn't tell our parents or my grandparents for another 2 weeks. I'd actually planned to keep it up till Christmas, but just because of circumstances, I thought that I should just tell them, because I knew that it would make their absolute life. It just got too hard to keep it a secret, so I caved early, and I'm glad I did. By the time this video goes up, not many of you, if any of you, will know. But this situation is nothing short of a miracle, so I just want to just scream it. I just want to tell everyone. I have all the footage of my family finding out, so I will be posting another video after this one of all their reactions, apart from Baz's, because I didn't film that. I know what he's like. He's emotionless on the outside, but I know he feels it on the inside, so I didn't want to film him. So now we're up to where I am now. It's still very much new to me, and I'm still relearning all the simple things. I can only take a few steps at a time, and then I get too tired. So I'm still going to be using my wheelchair for most of the things. It just makes it so much easier for me to be able to take those few steps from my wheelchair onto the sofa, little things like that. But I completely understand that it's going to take a while. I'm doing physiotherapy in my local hospital. I'm still seeing Colin twice a month. I still go to hydrotherapy as well as going to the gym too, where I do like weights and things. Obviously I'm not going to be using like a treadmill and things like that. That's a long way away, like I'm talking years. So it's just mainly weights and things right now. Now the main reasons for me making this video is, one, obviously it's a complete miracle and I want to share it with you. 2, I have had so much support during my illness that it's completely crazy. So the first people I want to share such amazing news with is all the people who supported me. 3, I can now walk from the driver's seat of the car to the boot to get my own wheelchair out, which is a complete amazing thing for me. That is a huge thing for me. It will help me with my independence so much. That's one thing I've really struggled with these past 4 years, having to rely on so many people for so many things. If no one is around to help me, I can't go to my physiotherapy sessions, I can't go swimming, I can't go do anything because I need someone to be with me to get my wheelchair out. So now that I can do that myself, so if anyone happens to see me in like Tesco or anything and they see me getting my own wheelchair out the boot to go off in my wheelchair, then this is why. Because I can do it now. I'm so happy. And lastly, I just cannot believe and completely lost hope that this would ever happen. So I'm just shocked, confused, proud, ecstatically happy to be in this place that I am right now. So I just wanted to share it. So this is where I'm at with my walking now. It's not crazy or anything. It's only been 3 months so far, so I'm still very much in the early stages of doing everything. And I am very aware that it's going to take a very long time to be able to do tiny little things like walk around Tesco. Do you realise I'm talking about Tesco a lot? I love Tesco. Push Gray out in the pram, you know, do little things like that. That is going to be years away, which, like, it's hard to think about now, but I've made so much progress. Just doing those 3 steps and being able to stand for a good few seconds is huge. So I'm taking every day as it comes, and I'm very, very, very blessed and lucky that this has happened, and I still can't believe it. I'm just so thankful that it happened, and I just never thought that it would, so it's amazing. So for now, walking those few steps and then having to rest my legs is a huge, huge, huge achievement, and I'm so proud of myself. And I honestly feel so much happier mentally since this has all happened, because I've been so down over the past 4 years. It's been so difficult, and throughout the whole thing I've always been tried to stay positive, tried to stay happy, because I like to live by there's always someone worse off than you. So I was very aware the whole time that I'm very lucky to be able to do the things that I do and that I am alive. And things could be so much worse. So to have that little bit of independence back, just that little bit of help, is just a miracle, and I just cannot believe it. And it makes me so happy. It definitely affected my postnatal depression. I got really bad postnatal depression because I felt I wasn't worthy as a mum because of the things that I was limited to do with Gray. And just the fact that I could now take him out, just me and him, because I can get my wheelchair out of the boot, that has just made things so much easier on my head. I can go to sleep at night knowing now that I am the best mum that I can be. And it's not that I wasn't before, it's just that I was so unconfident in myself before because no one believed in me. No one ever believed in me, and I didn't believe in myself. And I proved myself and everyone else wrong. So I'm very, very, very grateful. And finally, to explain the question that has been on everyone's minds for a very long time now, I can finally answer it. Why was I in a wheelchair? Why am I still in a wheelchair? Why did it all happen? Well, it was because of that lumbar puncture, that first lumbar puncture. During the process, they have gone in and severed a nerve, but the nerve hasn't been severed completely. It was still hanging on by a thread. And it's taken years and years for the nerve to repair itself and come back together because it's been stretched out so long, and it's come back at a very slow rate but a steady rate, and now the nerve is either fully repaired or almost fully repaired for me to be able to gain this back. So all the pain that I had, all the weird feelings that I was going through about 6 months ago, was all because of the nerve telling me that it was done repairing itself. So I look back and I think, could I have stood 6 months ago if I'd have tried? If I'd have started working on it then probably it would have happened back then. But in my mind, I was in such a bad place, I just wasn't emotionally ready. I knew I would have that breakdown, so I had to take those few months to myself to just really get into the right frame of mind and put myself in a positive mindset, because if I'd have tried back then when I was so down, I wouldn't have had the want, the need, the urge to do it, the motivation to go and try. So I had to be in that emotionally stable place before I could start anything, because otherwise I would have been so demotivated and it would have been pointless. So to summarise this video, thank you so much for all of your support always. This is a complete miracle. I cannot believe it's happened, but it has. And I thank my lucky stars every day, because I am definitely one of the lucky ones. So thank you. Thank you for believing in me if you did. I will update you as I get stronger. It might not be for a good few months because, as I said, it's a really slow process. Me having ME2 definitely hinders me a little bit because I get tired much quicker than a normal person. Well, I'm tired all the time, but I get like really tired quicker than a normal person. So I can't push myself as much as I would want to, but that's okay. That's life. Stuff happens. I am just so grateful for those few steps that I can take, and it will help me so much. I can't even tell you. Okay, before I start crying again, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below. I hope this video answered your questions if you've ever had any about why I'm in a wheelchair. And yeah, thank you so much. Oh my lord, that was emotional. I love you.